So, I want to talk a little bit about saving seeds. You know, food is one of the most important parts of life. And fresh food out of the garden, grown yourself, can be a great, wonderful thing. But one thing you need to have to grow a garden is seeds. And the seed supply right now is low. It seems all that the authorities are trying to stop seeds being imported from other countries. You know, and with all the genetically modified and seeds we just would say we maybe can't trust, we should really make an effort to grow our own food and seeds and food from those seeds. You know, when you start out simple. I started out when I was 12. I started growing, my first things I grew were dill, fennel, and beans. And you know, I saved the seeds from them. And for me, that was a learning experience that, you know, as a boy, it was a great thing to do. To plant them and grow them, save the seeds. I encourage you to let all your kids do that to an extent, if they can. Plant something and watch it grow. Well, in saving seeds, there's things to keep in mind that are very important. If you want to maintain purity of the seeds, there must be distances maintained between plants. Some varieties take 2 years to produce seed. Other varieties are produced each year. For people just starting out, I advise do the ones that produce in the first year. It's a little easier, and then move on to buying those. So, when you're growing your seeds, I already mentioned keeping the distance between varieties to keep the varieties pure, unless you want to have new varieties you don't know they're going to be. So on beans for the most part, they don't cross as easily as some things. I'd say usually about 50 feet for most varieties is good enough a distance. You'll want to cull out any bean plants that don't match the variety you want, so that you don't pass on the odd gene into the next seed year. On tomatoes, with the older varieties of tomatoes, you'll need to isolate from each other because the flowers are able to be, the pollen is able to be transferred by bees. But on newer varieties of tomatoes, most of the stigmas are inside the petals and they don't stick out, so you won't have that problem with the modern varieties. Peppers very rarely cross if planted, again, 50 to 100 feet from each other. But on most other varieties, you'll have to have between a mile, half a mile, or cage or hand pollination. What I usually do with my, it's like melons, I'll plant one variety of melons in one garden patch and then another variety in another garden patch. And usually I'll be alright. And on squash, there's 4 different species in the family of squash. There's Machata, Mixa, Maxima, and Peppo. And Peppos, the cross of Peppos. And for some reason, I can't keep in mind which one of those other 3 varieties it will cross with, but each one of the varieties will cross with one next to it, but not the other 2. So if you look it up online, or a garden book, they usually will have the information to know which variety. So cross with each other. So when you save your seeds, make sure the fruit is ripe. It's very important. So you save seeds from fruit that's not ripe, or if it's not fully matured, the germination won't be good, or it won't germinate at all. So you'll need to make sure they're ripe, and most times I try to, like on tomatoes, I take the tomato seeds with the juice and put them in the container and let them rot for, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 days, depending on how long it takes to break down. You want to stir them once a day. If you can, and then wash them out good. Wash out the trash. The good seeds will sink to the bottom. Now, on squash, you can't always say if it floats or sinks. Some squash sink and some float and some do both. So, on the squash, you just have to buy the variety, check the seeds and see if there's anything inside of them. And if there's nothing inside the ones floating, throw them away. Other varieties, like a lot of pebbles, the seeds will float, regardless of whether they're good or bad. Watermelons, it's quite simple. Just wash them. And then I use screens to dry my seeds. Dry them well. You want to dry them good, because if you don't dry them good, a seed is a living thing, and it will the germination rate will go down the longer they sit or in dampness. I usually put mine in bags and then put them into jars and store them in my basement. You can store them in the fridge, or you can freeze them indefinitely. They'll last indefinitely. But on beans, they recommend putting them into breathable bags, and corn as well, and then try to keep them in a dry place. On bugs, you'll need to watch for bugs eating your seeds. A lot of times, if you're storing a large amount of seeds, you can use dry ice. Put a piece of dry ice into the seeds, and it will and close in an airtight container. It will take the oxygen out. I've sometimes just burned paper and thrown it in, and then close the jar tightly to take the oxygen out, and let the fire go out on its own. Unlike freezing, it would also keep bugs from eating them. I used to use pennyroyal, but it seems not to work for weevils. It worked for moths, but it didn't keep the weevils out. Weevils can be extremely destructive to grains. And let's see. Try to when you save your seeds, remember that save what you want to eat next year. So if you have a really particularly good fruit, save it, and that way you'll improve your. Plant did very good in your area, bore well. If you'll save that seed, with time you will improve your variety. Now on corn, you need to make sure you keep a diversity in the corn variety, or in the corn, because your seed won't do as good if it doesn't have that. So you want between 50 to 100 plants. I block plant if I'm planting small lots to make sure that I get enough pollination, or you can hand pollinate if you don't have that option. Pretty much everything else that I know doesn't necessarily have to have any other plant or plants around it. At this point, I can't think of anything. I used to grow seeds for Seed Savers and Southern Exposure, and I still go for Baker Creek seeds, heirloom seeds. And to me, it's it's an enjoyable thing to do. To see seeds you save that other people grow or you grow, and it's passing on the heritage we've received from our ancestors. In the last 100 years, we've lost so many varieties of vegetables and fruits that have been lost because people did not maintain them. A lot of times now that people plant the same varieties again and again, and I'm not saying that all the heirloom varieties taste good. I've run into some that didn't taste that good, and I would say, well, for the home garden and family, plant what tastes good. And keep in mind that if you save seeds from hybrids, they will oftentimes not come true to type the next year, and you might have a completely different traits or flavors show up, or even colors. Oftentimes in flowers, the dark colors are dominant over white. So say you're wanting to save, you have balsam or petunias or any other kind of flowers. Keep that in mind. If you want to keep the white ones, you'll probably need to isolate them or keep more of them, because red or darker colors will take over with time. And on the biennials, you'll want to grow the seed, the cabbage or beets or cauliflower. I'm sorry, cauliflower is 1 year. Cabbage, beets, carrots, rutabagas, and turnips. You'll need to save them, grow them 1 year, then save them over winter, and then replant in the spring. And these will bear the second year. Now, cabbages. Keep in mind with cabbages. Cabbages will cross with kale, some kinds of kale, broccoli, cauliflower, rutabagas, Brussels sprouts, not rutabagas, Brussels sprouts. And being they all come from the same family, back in the Middle Ages, I don't think there was I'm not actually sure we could say exactly what the original vegetable was, but with time people have isolated certain traits they wanted, and that's what we have today. So keep that in mind, and you'll have to separate those for quite a distance, or you can cage them, build screen cages, and put the cages over the plants. That'll keep them from crossing. One of my favorite ones to grow is watermelons, because you can eat the watermelons, spit the seeds out. And then there's cantaloupes are very simple to save. Some of the hardest seeds to save that I've run into were radishes. It takes time to break the pods out. Sometimes you can thresh them and winnow them out in the wind. Pour the seeds from one bowl to another and let the wind blow the chaff out. That helps a lot to speed up your cleaning process. On beans the same way. Put them in a pebble case and knock them around a bit. And a lot of times certain kinds of beans will all fall out of the shells, and then you can use the wind to clean the trash out. It'll save you time. If you sit there and pick each one open one by one, it can get quite time consuming. But hey, don't give up. In this, sometimes you'll fail, sometimes you won't. Keep trying. Every little bit you do helps for the world. It's a gift we've received from our ancestors we need to pass on. And I encourage everybody. It doesn't matter how much you do. Just a few plants a year, a few varieties a year. It will help. It will help maintain the seeds, and we'll be able to pass on to our next generations coming after us. And hey, we don't know what's going to happen in this world. And it's important that we maintain the diversity of our plants so we can enjoy it in the future. And with that, I want to close. Thanking you all for listening. And hey, if you have any comments or questions, ask me. There's a lot of things I haven't covered. I'm just going over it very briefly. And I've saved almost every kind of seed. So I do have some experience in this. Hey, but enjoy the garden, enjoy eating it, and take care. I'll see you next time.